Well, hi everyone, this is Bonnie, and I work over in Gerton's birding department on the weekends, so make sure you stop and see me if you have any questions in the future. I'm always over there. But today what we're going to be talking about, in April, at the end of April, we talked about hummingbirds and we talked about orioles, and now that season is wrapping up. And so more of the questions that I've been getting, probably the main question that I get is, how do you stop squirrels from attacking your feeders and raiding them? And there really are different methods that you can use. Is there a foolproof way? I found some in the past 5 years, and part of it was finding the right feeder for myself, and I would highly recommend it. I spent hundreds of dollars on different feeders, and so for me, the best feeder for all of you, if you've got a lot of mature trees, you're going to have squirrels. People that say they don't have squirrels, they're usually in new developments, and they're smaller trees, but eventually they will be getting squirrels once those trees mature. So what is the best feeder that I would recommend? And we sell more of these probably than any feeder in our department. And people laugh at me all the time because they say, there goes another whipper out the store. And this is the Droll Yankees whipper. And why I like this one, there's 4 of them. There's, here we go, the flipper, the dipper, the tipper, and the whipper. And the whipper is the one that I love because this was created for our northern cardinals. And the reason it's so great is because not only does it accept cardinals, but the small birds jump on it all the time. Now, why is it designed for the northern cardinal? Because cardinals need to face their food. A lot of you that come into our department, you say, how do I get cardinals? Well, remember, the cardinals need to face their food. So if you have a tube feeder with a peg, they are not going to eat from it. They can land on it, but as they turn to the food port, it's too tight for them. So they need either an open tray or a wide perch, and this fits the bill. And why I love this one so much is because when I first put it out, the first 2 weeks, all I got were chickadees and goldfinches on it. And I thought to myself, gosh, this is crazy. I've got a tube feeder for them. I don't know why they're not going on that. Well, part of it is what the seed that I was feeding them, and also because of these nice wide perches. They have separate food ports so they can eat privately. And you can see this picture. There are goldfinches on here besides a cardinal. And cardinals eventually came. And now the rest is history. In 5 years, I've had grosbeaks, I've had chickadees, I've had nuthatches, I've had goldfinches, every bird you can imagine, except blue jays have trouble staying on these perches. Grackles, they don't like these perches. They're a heavier bird, and this is tension sprung. So it's made and created to fit up to the weight of a cardinal. That's why I love this so much. And so it takes 5 full pounds of seed. I never put that much seed in there. I've got mine on a rail on my deck, and I fill it about 1/3 of the way up. But the food ports are deep. Squirrels are known for hanging their back feet from a handle and getting their front paws into the food port. Well, they can't do it with this because it's too long. So it would have to be a squirrel on steroids, some sort of giganto squirrel that could hang like that. And it's too wide. It's 5 1/4 inches wide, so to shimmy down, it's impossible, unlike a thin tube feeder. Once they start to come down it, they hit that perch and off they go. And they end up going down into the mulch. It is the only feeder that has a lifetime warranty against squirrel damage. And Droll Yankees is so good. I've had customers that come into the store and they'll say, a squirrel broke mine, it cracked into a couple pieces, I sent a picture into Droll Yankees, and they sent a new feeder in a week. So that would be a first step for me, is invest in if you're only going to invest in one bird feeder ever, get this one, especially if you've got squirrels. So that's the Droll Yankees whipper. It's the one that's got the blue top on it in our birding department. And like I said, we sell more of those than any others. Now, if you don't want to invest that kind of money, some people say, well, if I just want to hang it from a tree, what do I do? Make sure if you've got a tree that you either have a baffle over the top so that when a squirrel jumps on it, it tips off. It also is a great way to keep the seed dry. And it also protects birds from Cooper's hawks. So Cooper's hawks are predators that come into a yard. I get them all the time. And birds will hunker down underneath this baffle. This particular baffle is for a pole system. So something like this. Now, this will not work on a shepherd's hook. Some of those really thin shepherd's hooks that have the crowns on them. This one is wider, and it's got little hooks on the bottom here where you can attach it to the pole, and put it at least 5 feet up, because squirrels can jump vertically 4 to 5 feet up. So you want it high enough so that they can't jump over it and then hit your bird feeder. So make sure if you're going to get a baffle on your pole feeder, you raise it high enough. Now, if people are saying, well, I don't have a pole, so I just got one of those shepherd's hooks, those really thin little shepherd's hook. This is really great. This is the Squirrel Slinky, and remember those when you were kids. It's just basically the same concept. So what you would do is you would attach it right at the crown, or excuse me, you would attach it in the ground, and you'd bring it up and you'd attach it over the crown. So when squirrels try and get up the small shepherd's hook or the very thin shepherd's hook, the sound of the bang, bang, bang of the metal of the slinky, they fall right off of it. And it works really, really slick. Another question people get is, how do I keep squirrels out of my planters and my pots? So I found out that this works really, really well. And it's a squirrel repellent for people that right now we're getting rid of some of our annuals, but we've got our mums. Squirrels love mums. They love to eat them. If you shake some of this in your pots and containers, it's got a smell that they don't like. And so I always use this in our pots and containers.
Is that organic?
It is organic. I mean, there's no chemicals in there. It's nothing like that's going to get them sick. Now, people will also ask about hot pepper. This is a problem that I have with that. And even though they'll say, well, it doesn't do any harm to an animal, and squirrels don't like it, capsaicin is part of a squirrel's diet in nuts. So they might not like it at first, but they get used to it. My only other concern on that, and that's why I don't use the hot pepper powders or when you saturate the liquids where you saturate the seed. You know, everybody that knows me knows I believe in the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And everything that they say is the research has not been completely done on this, but if you put some of that hot pepper, they're not sure what it does internally to the gut of a bird, or if that powder went into their eyes. If birds can't see, they're done. And so I don't like that. I think there are other ways to prevent squirrels from getting into seed, and hot pepper is not my favorite source. But this is a type of that you just sprinkle in the pots.
How long does that repellent last?
So it lasts about a month. When you're watering, it's going to soak down into the soil, and you might want to sprinkle a few more granules. I've had this for 2 years, and it's still almost full. So you can use a lot of it. You can use a very small amount, and it just soaks down in the soil. It doesn't hurt anything, and it doesn't hurt your plants. So, any other questions that we have here?
We have a question about using Vaseline on poles to keep squirrels off. Does that actually work?
It will work for the time being, but this is the problem with Vaseline. And I've heard some horror stories with people where they grease that shepherd's hook or they grease the pole, and they think it's really funny because the squirrel will go up and he gets it all over his feet. Now, if any of that Vaseline got on a bird's wings, they're dead, because any oil or grease is going to kill a bird. If they can't fly, they are open to predation, and that's the whole reason we love feeding our birds. We don't want to kill them. Now, a lot of people don't like squirrels, and so they don't care. I've heard horror stories where and some people say it's not a horror story, Bonnie, where they'll use BB guns on them. I've even heard about people, I just saw this on Next Door Neighbor, where somebody was laughing and they called this squirrel grape nuts because the squirrel was completely purple. And what had happened is people trap squirrels and they spray paint them. And then they take them to another area to release them, thinking they're being kind. And then they'll be able to notice them if they come back into your yard. They'll say, oh, well, that squirrel came back into my yard. But you don't know what that it can do to their eyes, to their skin. Some people don't care. I think it's really inhumane to spray paint any kind of an animal with anything like that, or shooting them. I think there are ways to live in the woods with squirrels. Some people, they'll buy food and they'll watch squirrels eat it. They love it. But for me, there's certain things that you can do. Vaseline, WD-40, any kind of oil or grease is really not a good idea. It doesn't work.
Is there a particular seed that squirrels don't eat?
Nope. Now, you can see this. I mean, some people can Google it and they go, oh, they don't like Niger and they don't like safflower. Niger is their least favorite. When I first started feeding birds, I would put up one of those Niger socks, and it got split right down the middle from a squirrel. And it all laid on the ground because they won't touch it. But it grows, and so it was just a royal mess. Safflower, if they're hungry enough, they will eat safflower. So don't let anybody tell you that they won't eat it, because when squirrels are hungry enough, they'll eat your lawn furniture. They're like beavers. They've got 4 incisors and they have to keep their teeth trimmed. And in order to do that, that's why a lot of people say, oh my God, it chewed right through metal. My neighbor had a by-the-yard chair, $1,500, and a squirrel chewed part of that. And the damage was done, and by-the-yard said, we're not covering it. You got a lifetime warranty, but not against squirrel damage. So, yes.
So Sally is asking, from the previous question about spray painting a squirrel, is there a humane way to trap the squirrels, and if they drive them miles away and release them, does that work?
Well, it does work, but again, for people that care about the animal itself, it can be very cruel. The reason being, when you move a squirrel, you don't know if it's got babies around. You don't know, that's its home. So when you take it to another area of woods, other squirrels usually kill them because it's a squirrel they recognize, they don't recognize, and they will end up killing them. So I know a lot of people say, well, that's not my problem, that's for them to deal with. But you can do that to get them out of your yard, but that's why I really suggest don't be feeding squirrels. Some people come in and they buy piles of corn just to feed the squirrels. Well, you know what the squirrel is saying? Hey, to the other squirrels, a new restaurant just opened up in town. And so other squirrels are going to come around, they're going to finish that off, and they're going to be right back at your feeders. So I would not encourage them. I would just get yourself a really good feeder and really good seed. Again, squirrels are going to like sunflowers and peanuts. There's very few seeds that they don't like. But the least favorite is going to be Niger and safflower. So if you want to give strictly safflower, you could do that.
We have people that want to thank you for speaking about the humane aspect.
Well, you're so welcome. I love animals, and so it's tough sometimes when you hear some of the stories, but I know they're a nuisance. But as my neighbors and friends always tell me, Bonnie, you built a house in their home. The woods were their home, and I have to remember that. So I just choose to live with them and do my best. I said, they live to eat and torture me, and I just found a way to work with them as far as getting the right feeder.
Do squirrels hibernate? That's another question.
They do not, sadly. What they do is they're building nests now. In fact, in my big ash tree out front, there's a humongous squirrel's nest. I can see them with leaves in their mouth, and they're going out there. So they're not quite as active in very cold weather. If it's a blizzard, if it's very, very cold out, they're not going to be running around trying to find food. They're going to just hunker down, but they do not hibernate. Raccoons, they do in a semi-hibernation. So you won't see many raccoons now. They're getting fat, they're starting to feed. I have a couple raccoons in my yard that look like bears. I mean, they're really filling up on food, and then they go into a semi-hibernation state, and then they'll be out when the weather gets nicer in March and April.
We've got some questions about birds specifically and the feeders.
Sure.
Can you use bleach or your dishwasher to clean your feeders?
I don't. Well, some people say bleach kills any kind of fungus. I'm a big believer in a 50-50 solution of distilled vinegar, white vinegar, and hot water, and that let it soak. And it's the same thing with a bird bath. Some people spend a lot of money with some of these chemicals to clean the calcification on bird baths with a lime, but using distilled vinegar, take it out of commission so birds aren't drinking from it, but take it in your garage or cover it, and put distilled vinegar in your feeder or in your bird bath, let it sit for a few hours, and then just brush it off. And all that stuff just goes away. And that's the way I like to clean my hummingbird feeders. I don't like dish soap. If there's any residue from dish soap, that can sicken a bird. And so that's why a lot of people say, well, I just put my hummingbird feeder in the dishwasher. I would suggest not doing that and just using the distilled vinegar. It works wonders. It keeps the glass clear, it keeps the plastic clear, and it doesn't sicken a bird.
Besides feeders, how can people keep birds coming all winter to their yards?
Besides feeders? Mm-hmm. Well, if there are trees, birds are always going to be around in your yard. The thing, if people really want to have them in their yard to nest, or I shouldn't say to nest, but to get shelter or cover, if you've got evergreens, that's where cardinals go, that's where a lot of birds go for cover. This is called a roosting house, and it's very inexpensive. We have them all year round. It's not like a wren house, it's not like a chickadee house that's got a big hole in it. And I've seen in my roosting houses in the winter during blizzards, right at dusk, 2, 3, 4 chickadees will go in here and they'll hunker down and cuddle up with each other. It's really a neat way. Now, do these last for years and years? No, they don't. But it's a really nice way. Otherwise, if you've got wren houses or chickadee houses up, clean them out now because baby season is completely done. You should always clean out your birdhouses. And again, with the same solution, but get all those twigs because there could be there could be spider eggs in there. Wear nice rubber gloves, dump all that material out, and then rehang it so that birds have shelter.
We have someone that wants to know when they should put away their hummingbird feeder for the winter.
Yeah, that's a really tough question because people are saying, I haven't seen one for a week, and I was thinking the same thing, and then sure enough this morning I had 2 of them. Now, chances are, 99% of the time, you are not going to get male hummingbirds anymore. They are the first ones back to our state and the first ones to leave. The males start to look for territories for nesting, and then the females come. So what you're seeing now at your hummingbird feeders, it's going to be females and the juveniles. And the juveniles look a lot like the females. They don't have the bright red chest, the ruby throat, or the white collar. They're going to be more of a pale lime green and a yellow color. But I keep mine out even if there's a frost. Now tonight it's going to be in the 40s. That's really cold. You can bring your hummingbird feeder in and then put it out first thing in the morning at the crack of dawn because they do come early morning. These fueling stations, as I said back in April, are critical for these birds as they start to migrate. All our annuals are dying back. Flowers are starting to fade away. So these fueling stations, as they head south, that's what they depend on. So I would keep them fresh all the way through the end of October at least, or at least in 2 weeks until you haven't seen any hummingbirds at all. So keep making that nectar.
How many other types of birds stay throughout the winter?
Oh, lots. Not enough in my world. I mean, I'd like a lot more, but blue jays stick around all year. I even have robins, and the way I have robins, when people are saying, oh my gosh, back in March, I had my first robin. Well, I have them all winter long, and the reason, I give them mealworms on a tray on the ground, which squirrels like too, so you have to protect that, and give them a heated bird bath because birds need water. It's critical for them. So they can live a couple days without food, but they have a very hard time melting snow in their beaks. It takes up a ton of energy. So what you want to do is make sure you get yourself a heated bird bath. And we can discuss that at a later time, but if anybody has any questions, our heated bird baths and our heaters themselves are in the store right now. So we've got, we've got jays, we've got chickadees, juncos, what we call the snowbirds, the little juncos that eat around the ground. When you see a first sign of them, that usually means winter is on the way. And then, of course, in the spring when we see them, but they're called snowbirds.
Are there any other things we need to do to prep for winter for our birds?
Yes, there's a lot of things that you could do. So what I was saying earlier is you've got to clean out all your bird houses. You've got to clean out your feeders. And a lot of people just say, well, I just take a brush in there, and if the food ports get kind of crusty or moldy or whatever, all that seed you should be raking off the ground if you have a pole system, which I do. And again, remember, squirrels can jump horizontally up to 8 to 9 feet. So they'll be on the side of the trunk of a tree and they will aim at that feeder and knock it off a hook. I mean, that's how resourceful they are. And then, of course, vertically, they can go 4 to 5 feet. So you should be cleaning out your feeders. You should be, if you're getting a pole system, make sure that it's a good 10 feet away from your mature trees. And the whole idea is maintenance is so critical because birds get sick. Rake all that old seed underneath, put it into the garbage can. For people that say, I don't like seed that falls down, if you get a big, this is what I've done, if you get a big plastic saucer, which is really inexpensive, that you put under your big plants, put a big saucer under there, put a rock in it so it doesn't blow away, and then you put your mulch around it or some stone around it, and all of that seed will drop in that humongous saucer, and then Trash Eve, take all of that and put it in a trash bag and send it out, and that'll keep things from growing. Yes?
So someone asked about cedar waxwings.
Yeah.
Last year, she said they had a whole bunch come to the honeysuckle vine and then they were gone. Are they migratory and they're just flying through?
They are. And I get them too. And a lot of people get really upset because they'll find dead cedar waxwings underneath a tree, because if you've got an apple tree, crab apples, they love them, and they'll come 15, 20 at a time, and they're fermented and they get drunk. and they'll slam into windows. I sometimes have crab apples smashed all over my window, and it's from cedar waxwings. They are stunning birds, and they come in flocks, and they'll stay for a short amount of time, and they start to move, probably just even to Iowa if it's a little bit warm. Some don't leave the state if there's a source of crab apples still on the tree or water. Just like robins, they will stick around. But yeah, that's a magnificent bird. So that's our segment for today. If anybody has any other questions, make sure you send us any kind of notes on Facebook. I'll be happy to answer them as soon as I see them. And then come and see me on the weekend, and we'll show you how to squirrel-proof your yard. Thanks, everyone.